Alright, what's going on, Forgotten Nation? I'm your host, DevG, and welcome to the end game of Runner 3. In today's episode, I'm going to be playing a couple of the challenge stages, as well as finally giving my thoughts and review of the game as a whole. So without any further ado, we're going to go straight into the first challenge stage. And the voice itself is pretty fun. Now, originally I was considering doing all the challenge stages, but I had my reasons for not doing them. And the first reason, it's not that they're impossible, they're unfair. And if I get to a certain point in the stage, I'll show you exactly what I mean. The challenge stages are made to be the hardest stages the game has to offer. And of course it has both the currencies. You have the gold, you have the gems. And the idea is, sure, you can complete the stage, but of course you're going to want to go for all the collectibles. After all, this is a 100% complete run. And that's how I've been basing my playthrough of the series as a whole. To get all the gold, all the gems, all the collectibles. And so the idea for these challenge stages is, of course, you gotta get these collectibles. Otherwise, you're just playing a stage that, while it does have an end, doesn't really feel accomplished in the hindsight of it all. So right now, it's looking pretty basic. I have practiced it a couple of times. As a matter of fact, I've actually done an episode of this in advance, but after failing so many times, I've opted out of uploading it completely. We're talking 100 plus, that's how hard these stages are. But right now I'm doing really good. And of course, these stages do have checkpoints. I'm just gonna hop over for this one, and we'll see a reason why, because I'm not focused on completing this whole thing through. But we're doing good. So we're gonna see there's these hurdles here. Two of them are lapped together, so we're able to easily cover that with the double jump. Nice and easy, nothing too bad. Use the slam down so you get past it. It's looking pretty easy from your perspective. For me, however, this took a long time to practice. And I didn't quite get to where I wanted to, so I am going to have to take that checkpoint. I am just trying to show off something in this stage specifically before we go to the next one. But if I had to give props to the challenge stages, they definitely are challenging. They definitely take a lot out of what you've learned from the game itself. From being able to slam onto the ground, utilizing the double jump, as well as even the placement, because you do have to react to some of this stuff pretty fast. Like the gems I just grabbed there, you need to be able to time it just right on the slam. But then, once I get to where I'm trying to get, if I don't fail so many times, I'm going to show you that there is a little bit of unfairness to these challenges. Maybe it's just 95 windows, but for what it is, I don't think it's really worth completing. And that's the other reason I'm not covering all 9 levels. The only real thing you get out of completing the challenge stages is, of course, the perfect plus marks that you get on the map, as well as getting all the collectibles should you go that route. And as we've covered before, the only thing you really get with the gems, the Gildens, is the costumes. There's no Master 100% unlockable that you get. There is no Retro Commander video, there's no special 10th challenge stage. It's really just the stages alone, and that's the end of it. So to complete them is up to you. If you're playing the Steam version, of course, or even the later versions when they come out, PlayStation, Xbox, all you're really going for is the achievements. So there really isn't too much to it. And that's a bit of a shame, especially when it came to when I was playing the retro levels. I was really hoping that there was some master collectible they could get out of it. But in the end, all there really was is the Gildens. The Gildens are the only collectible that you get out of the retro stages. There's no master unlockable that you get, say, for example, Runner 2, you get Retro Commander video. But in fairness, I guess that is alright, because in the first Bit.Trip runner, there was no collectible for the those retro stages. It was just an extra completion mark on the map. And while this game does have something similar, say you get all 5 Gildens, you do get the ability to upload your score to the master rankings, if you're into the leaderboard kind of stuff. But for what it is, I do kind of wish that there was some sort of big unlockable you got for doing these meta challenges. Because, for what it is, some of those Gildens, while I wouldn't say they're too hard, they were a bit of a challenge to get. Alright, so we're quickly coming up to the parts. The most I can say is I am doing better than most players, and that is an achievement. Okay, here it is. So we're gonna slam down, get the gems. Wait, nope, not here. Up ahead. This part. Wait, nope, not this part. I'm sorry, guys. But even that part's hard on its own if you're going for all the stuff. The normal player would probably just skip those gems and just go with the game itself. But we're not here for the game, we're here for trying to complete it. And I guess that does kind of taint the experience if you are here just for the gameplay. I do apologize for that. But come on, if you see the collectible, you gotta grab the collectible. That's like good gaming 101. It's like the people that leave that one last coin after collecting all the others in Super Mario. Or missing that one computer box that had the sprint shoes in it from Sonic the Hedgehog. It's a small thing that you miss, it pisses you off so much. And the same goes here. You want to go for the gems, you want to go for the gold. But then there's so much challenge involved. There we go. It almost feels like it's not worth it. Alright, here's the part I was talking about. So we're going to see there are 4 jumps here, and I just barely managed to get past it. So unless you have super timing, you're able to get it just right. You are not going to be able to get up that jump at all. Not even with the standard double jump. So it only takes a skilled player and a little bit of luck if you want to make it over that jump. And while that may be the final obstacle the stage has to offer, I've spent so much time on that one obstacle I considered unfair. So in that mind, that's 95 windows. We're going to jump to another stage. We're going to skip Food Land and go to Spooky Land because I want to show variety. The thing with the challenge stages is that it's essentially its own world. While there is one in every world, it's still the same idea of the landscape. It looks like it's from like a techno world based in a computer. And I do give it props. It's a really cool aesthetic. I just wish that it was a little easier. I mean, sure, it's a challenge stage, but it's supposed to be challenging, but not impossible. It's the impossibility that comes out of it that makes it a little unfair. And even in terms of stuff like the placement of the items. So, we're gonna go, let's say... Yeah, here's a good one. Come on. There you go.
1-900.
So, this is the 5th challenge stage. Now, with these challenge stages also, you need to have a set amount of gold in order to access them. Which, luckily for us, was no problem because we dedicated some of the episodes to a gold run alone. But say you're not going for the gold, then you're not going to really get to experience these stages in their own right. So we're going to get past this part real fast. There we go. So nothing too bad here. But, of course, with any challenge stage, it will start to get hard. So, this is probably not the worst of it just yet. But it definitely does... I want to say the word is tempt you. So, we're doing it. I give props to whoever's able to complete these challenge stages. And, actually, someone has. They have managed to complete these stages to their full without using the checkpoints and grabbing all the collectibles. And that is an amazing skill on its own right. We're going to give this one more go, and I think that's going to be it for this episode. And the third reason that I don't feel like doing these challenge stages is that I believe Runner 3 has run its course already. We've covered the main game several times now, because essentially we kind of did 3 playthroughs to its own right. We did the gold run, we did the gem run, we did the collectible run. And by that point, you've played the stage 3 times now. Or, not the stage, the world, per se. And right now, you can see I'm missing all these collectibles, so right now, it's not looking too good. Heavy use of the slam, but even trying to recover after a slam into the jump is not very easy. But, yes, I've essentially played Runner 3 3 times now. The magic number being 3. Number 3. I'm sick of number 3. But anyways, so I feel like this game has run its course. That I think it's time we go for something new on the channel. We can't play the same game forever. Otherwise, of course, people are going to get bored of it. I get bored alone if I watch the same game over and over again. So in that in mind, I think this is finally it for our Runner 3 playthrough. While it's not entirely 100%, because the challenge stages are their own right to be mastered, I would say for the main game alone, that was a pretty good run. And I would say we did just as much as the game was asking us to. We got all the gold, all the gems, all the collectibles. We got to witness the story, if you'd call it one. We got all the characters. We even got the secret character medallions. which is something some people don't even know about in this game. So I would say that's a pretty good success through this series playthrough. With that in mind, thank you guys so much for watching this playthrough, and now it's time to really talk about the game in bulk. So this is going to be a single screen segment. This is mostly me talking about the game itself. There's nothing really more to the gameplay, so if you guys are done here, thank you so much for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next video. But now it's time to really break the game down as we saw it fit. So what do I finally think after playing the entirety of Runner 3? My final thoughts? It really did not impress me. If I'm really being honest here, there was something magical to Bit.Trip Runner and Runner 2 that somehow seems missing from Runner 3. Let's just start with the premise itself. So Runner 3 is a spin-off, and in its attempt to abandon its previous name, the Bit.Trip, somehow we see ourselves coming back to it. From the characters, even the final boss being a representation of the Bit.Trip main antagonist and the Bit.Trip world itself. So though it tries to escape the Bit.Trip, it still is the Bit.Trip. And I don't understand what the developers were going for here, that they're trying to separate itself from the Bit.Trip, but suddenly return to the Bit.Trip. If you're going to do that, at least acknowledge the Bit.Trip a little more in depth. The idea that if you're going to make this Bit.Trip Runner 3, you're going to acknowledge previous stuff, make it work. The whole game feels like it's trying to abandon Bit.Trip, but in reality it just goes back to it. And with that in mind, even some aspects from Bit.Trip Runner and Runner 2 are missing. But sticking with the focus of the story and the premise to begin with, it does feel like a spin-off in some aspects. The story is definitely spin-off material, whereas it's a story, there's stuff going on, but it's nothing major to a point that it carries on the story any further. So say you're just playing Bit.Trip Runner, Runner 2, Runner 3 has no impact whatsoever on the main story that is Bit.Trip. And honestly, that is a good thing, the way you look at it here, because I think if they did continue this being a Bit.Trip game, I don't know if I like the direction it would be heading, and it would spell discontinuity in terms of what happens between Runner and Bit.Trip fates. So I'm glad this is a spin-off to its own right. I just wish it would have separated itself a little more from the other Runner games. With that in mind, let's talk about the gameplay now, because the gameplay is definitely something. While it does adhere to Runner and Runner 2, it also abandons and changes. Let's talk about abandons. So, of course, you still have some aspects of the main game itself. You're able to jump, you're able to kick, you are able to slide. You have the trampolines, the bounce pads, and of course you have to avoid the enemies as they come. But there were some things from Bit.Trip Runner and Runner 2 they abandoned. For example, remember that paddle that Commander Video would have to deflect the beats? That's gone. How about those loop-de-loops that you shine the light on him? Those are gone too. Now this is a small thing, but it's still in this game. How about when Commander Video is sliding and he's still able to jump just between the enemies? Why is it still in this game, but there's no use of that? There is no use of the slide and jump mechanic for the Runner 3 verse. It's there, but it feels incomplete. If you're gonna have that, why is there nothing that utilizes it? And then there's also the ability to dance. That really hasn't changed much, but it feels a little lesser here because of everything that's being thrown in front of you. Not just the enemies, but being able to jump and switch lanes. It just feels like too much is happening to utilize this dance ability. And we need to talk about that dab. The Commander Video dab, it's like it's trying to be hit with the kids, but in reality it can't stand its own ground. I don't know, maybe I'm being too harsh on that. I just wish they wouldn't do it. I really wish Commander Video did not dab. But other gameplay-wise, the set pieces were pretty unique, I'll give it that much. I did like how every level was unique, so when you play the game itself, it didn't feel like you were doing the same thing over and over again. And I do feel like that was a necessary step in order to further this with the other Bit.Trip Runner games. Because if you look back at Runner 2, Sure, the stages are the same, but the layouts, while they are different, it still feels like you're doing the same thing over and over again. So luckily Runner 3 did have some diversity with its level design and gameplay in that aspect. But that also creates the problem that the stages themselves are a little too long. And the payout for skipping those checkpoints like I did, my golden motto, say no to checkpoints, almost feels worthless in the end. Because sure, you get the point bonus for it, but that's the only bonus, and it's not really that big of a bonus to carry out with skipping the checkpoints. Only besides the idea of increasing the difficulty. But with that in mind, this game suffers from the great difficulty that it already has. Runner 3 is much more difficult than the first Bit.Trip Runner and Runner 2. Whether it's because of its game design, or whether or not it's because of how they shaped the game itself, this game doesn't feel very welcoming to the new players that would pick it up on day one. So basically you need to have experience of Runner and Runner 2 in order to really get a good grasp on this game. Now, I want to talk about this because recently they actually mentioned in the eShop that this game did get a version 1.02 update. And along with that, they mentioned that future updates would have changes to the difficulty. Now, as someone who's followed this game since the beginning, one of the core reasons of the branching paths was to change the difficulty. The idea that you don't have to change paths, but it's there if you want that extra little bit of difficulty. But the game locks you out of the freedom to choose where you want to go, making you have to play the stage again and again just to access the new areas. So it does strip you of that freedom. I would have liked my playthrough to have been just the gold and the gem run in one take, not having to play the stage over and over again just to go for the gold, then to go for the gems, and then a third time on top of that for the collectibles. And with the collectibles, you had to unlock them first by meeting the hero quest. And some of these locations for the hero quest were very much annoying. Especially that one guy, the one that stuffs his face with spaghetti in the food land. The fact that I missed that in my first playthrough of the stage, that it's just right under you, and you have no idea that he's under you. There's no hint whatsoever in terms of the level design or the gameplay, is really infuriating. I would like to have known that there was that underneath as an option that you could have taken. There was no sign, there was no... Well, I guess you could say a little bit, because there's some prediction based on the design of the cave underneath. But if you say you fall in the first time, you're going to think it's a hazard, so you're not going to try the second time to fall back in, which I felt was unfair. And remember the wolf in the beginning of Spooky Lands. The fact that the path was right in front of you after the checkpoint felt unfair, because the camera is focused on Commander Video, so there's no telling what's really in the front perspective of you. So of course you're going to miss that hero quest, because you don't even know the hero quest is there. So some of this placement really doesn't feel like it belongs. And that brings me to the arguments about the different paths, which I feel like I've explained already. The paths feel worthless. The fact that even after you complete a stage, sure you get the new path, but even if it forces you on the path you choose. Say you're taking the gold run, but you want to take another path, the game automatically directs you to that path. So there is really no sense of freedom in these alternate paths, because no matter what, it's always going to direct you to the path based on the collectible you're going for. And I just wish there was still that sense of freedom with the paths that you choose. Anyways, other stuff gameplay-wise. Difficulty I mentioned, I still think this is too difficult for the incoming player. The fact that the difficulty feels like it's too much at times. They really should have toned it down in the earlier stages and had a greater sense of balance as you got towards the end. Especially, it feels like the gem routes were so much easier than the gold routes. Plus, it's one thing when it's the final world, but there was a heavy use of the double jump and the slam. If you're going off a game that was based on rhythm and such from Runner and Runner 2, you should have kept the gameplay a little more on the simple side. At least so you didn't have to always utilize these extra abilities as if they were mandatory. So, say you don't want to use the double jump, at least make some stuff utilized where you don't have to double jump, but eventually it becomes to a point where you're forced to use it. And that would make sense, say, in the later levels, but early on, it's got to be gradual so you get used to it before it forces you doing that. And even the idea of the double jump, I don't really feel like it belongs in the Runnerverse. I'd rather just have stuck to a single jump instead of having to double jump. Maybe it's just me, but I don't know if I like the direction that took. And the boss fights. So, some of them were good. In terms of creativity and design, I liked Sausage Santa. I liked the idea that there was the Owls of Parliament and Reverse Mermech. That was a fun one. But some of these boss fights felt a little lackluster. Let me explain. So, Sausage Santa. The fact that you're no longer running, that you're set shooting the sausages back at him, I don't know if that really belongs with the gameplay. The Owls of Parliament. Now sure, this is really based on the gameplay itself, but it becomes so predictable, it's a really fast fight where I don't know if it's worth staying. It felt too fast, if I'm summarizing here. I felt like it should have been a little longer, especially based on what we saw from Sausage Santa, because that took a whole 9 hits to finally kill him. So for it to be so much faster than the first boss fight, I don't know what's going on there. It should have been maybe a little harder, maybe a little longer. Reverse Mermech, beautiful fight. I would not change that for anything. And then Timbletot. I especially love the redesign that Timbletot had. But it was the end of the boss fight that felt really short. I wish they would have dragged on that section a little longer based on the Bit.Trip itself. Or at least maybe make a fourth world on the Bit.Trip if you're going to actually use it. I don't know. Something about it felt incomplete. I would like it to be just a little longer. Maybe it's just me, but that's my thoughts on that. And mentioning Timbletot's redesign, let's talk about the design aesthetic of the game itself. Because Runner 3 looks not too good. Not too good at all. Now, the Bit.Trip series is always known for its pixelated style. Runner 2 was the first to have this surrealistic style, where it almost feels real, but it's cartoonish is the best way to describe it, but it still had that extra layer of polish. And what I mean by polish is that it actually feels... Best way to describe this. Something about its design feels right. That it's not too bland, it's not missing any detail. It feels like it works well for what it's accomplishing. Runner 3... Something about its design feels like it could have been completed in less than a month, the world itself. The world feels so much more open, there's so much more emptiness to it. And even from the design perspective, it feels like one of those cheaper games you buy for $7.99 on like an app store or the eShop, I guess you could say. I don't know, something about the Runner 3 universe didn't really feel that well polished compared to, say, Runner 2, for example. I'm not going to mention Bit.Trip Runner because the pixelated style is something that not everyone's going to respect to its own right, but still feels like it works in a sense. That was kind of bland too, but I'll give it props for that because it's still unique to its own right. Whereas here, Runner 2 did it first, and I feel like Runner 2 did it a little better. While there's much more zaniness going on in Runner 3, it just feels like it's missing that little bit of polish that it needed to make it look a little better. I don't know. Maybe I'm the only one here. But even the camera angles didn't help that idea of the design and the geography of the world itself. But that's the design of Runner 3. I can't say I was a big fan of it. Moving on forward, let's talk about the unlockables that you get. I was a fan of the puppet shows. I really did like the puppet shows. They added on some fun cutscenes that really did further the spin-off idea that still kind of fit in with the verse itself until some certain situations. I want to say Machine Land being one of them, but I won't go into too much detail. My only nitpick is the fact that there was singing in all the world. it would have worked for Food Land. I don't know how to describe that, but I feel like it works for Food Land. But Spooky Land, Machine Land, I don't like the idea that they were singing in all the cutscenes. It felt dragged out, especially Spooky Land. Spooky Land, something about the Spooky Land cutscene felt weak. It didn't hit me the same way that Food Land or Machine Land did. That was probably the weakest cutscene in the entire game. Anyways, so collectible-wise, that was pretty good. And the characters, also. I did like the idea of, say, characters like Shovel Knight, Charles Martinet. That was actually a big surprise, that Charles Martinet was a playable character in this game. I think this may be the only time Charles has actually been a playable character besides the persona of Super Mario. So that was pretty fun to see. Charles Martinet did a really good job with the voice acting in this game. So I will give him props where props is done. As well as other characters. Sure, he had some of the returning ones, but I don't know. I don't know if I liked all the characters. I guess Aunt Rudy would be one of the examples. It feels too creepy. There's one of the robots that's based on one of the enemies in the game. I can't think of the name of it. It's not Sadbot, but it's another one. I don't know if that's the most creative character. But characters are, I would say, 50-50. Some of them are good. Some of them I feel like maybe... But they did fit with the Runner 3 verse, so I will give it props where that is. And now, moving forward, let's talk about the challenge stages. More specifically, the retro stages first. I really did like those retro stages. The fact that it took on the Hanna-Barbera style and made it work was definitely fun. And the platforming itself was pretty tight. It felt pretty good in terms of controlling. And it was the only area of the game that didn't suffer long-ass loading times. Because the loading times was something that really got on my mind after a while. I feel like a game at this day of age shouldn't have that long loading times. It was so long that I ran out of things to even say during the loading times. So that did feel dragged on, but the retro stages got it just right. But of course they weren't perfect. The biggest thing being the fact that there's no end collectible towards them. Now the main idea is that you get the Gildens, sure, but after completing all 3 sets of retro worlds, there's no end game for that. There's no big collectible, there's no the end or anything like that, no extra cutscene. So in the end, it feels like it was kind of wasted. I would have liked my efforts besides the Gildens to have gone to a better time consumption rather than just the Gildens. I would have liked some sort of master unlockable at the end of it. And the other thing, I guess it wasn't the biggest waste of time, but that's the other thing too, time itself. These stages did feel pretty short, especially when you look back at Runner's retro stages, Runner 2's retro stages. Sure, there's less of them, but they felt a little more longer. I want to say that Bit.Trip Runner's retro stages were longer than the ones we see in Runner 3. And honestly, I wish there was more to these retro stages, because this is one of the best parts of the game, the fact that the style alone, the fast gameplay to it, but I still feel like they should have been longer. That's my only complaint, really, about the retro stages, is that I feel like they should have been longer. And maybe a little more diversity in the enemies, but that's not the biggest problem. But anyways, I do think that the stages could have been a little longer and could have had a better collectible in the end of it all. But for what they worked well. I really did like the retro stages they had to offer for Runner 3. And now, I already mentioned everything about the challenge stages. I really do not like the challenge stages for the fact that they're not impossible, but they feel unfair. And even to mention that some of the creators themselves have never beaten the challenge stages. And I think it's kind of a red flag when you're publishing a game. I feel like if you're making levels, you should at least be able to complete the levels before sending off for the world to try. But they're not the first company to do this. There have been other games before this, so I guess I can't dock too much, but I just wish they would have been a little more possible to them. So that sounds like it's everything the game has. Oh, wait, no. One more thing. The music. Runner 3's music. How does it par in terms of Bit.Trip Runner or Runner 2? There were some really good tracks I liked in this game, but it was a hit or miss, in a sense. So the idea is that it still uses some of the main motifs from Bit.Trip Runner, Runner 2. It's got the main theme. Ba-da-da-da. It's got the end theme. Some of it is still there. But then they have 3 different tracks for each of the worlds. And some of them are pretty good. I liked most of Foodland to an extent. I'd probably have to choose my favorites. I want to say the song that plays during Bryony's solicitation, as well as the other song that's like all like the quirky sound effects and stuff. That was a fun one. Spookyland, I can't say I had really any favorites or any that were memorable to an extent. Maybe the 3rd level in the Spookyland would probably be my favorites. And Machine Land. I would say the 2nd and the 3rd stage. The 3rd stage especially because I remember that the most from the trailers of Runner 3. But to choose one, probably just the 2nd stage's music. And the retro stage's music, I thought they were good. I would probably choose a favorite. I kind of like the caves especially, that main theme. That was a fun one. But overall, I can't say to an extent, not in the same way that Runner 2 did it, that I'm going to be remembering these songs for a long time to come. They really didn't feel that memorable. They were just, there they are, and that's it. Even after playing the stages, well, the worlds, 3 times, I can't say I really remembered them. So, the music is pretty forgettable. And that's a shame, because I really did like the soundtracks that the original Bit.Trip series had, as well as Runner 2. I had the whole soundtrack on my computer, and I even bought the vinyl for the Bit.Trip series. That goes to show how much I love the music the series has, but Runner 3, I'm a little disappointed with the music. I don't know if it could have been better, but for what it is, it just feels forgettable compared to what we've heard in the past with the other games. And that's really all I could think of from the top of my head about complete thoughts of Runner 3. So, let's give it a review. To summarize, the premise is a bit far-fetched, but it kind of works in some cases. The gameplay both abandons and returns some returning aspects of the Runner series. Does it work? Only in some situations. Music? It's pretty forgettable, but there are some pretty fun ones to be had. Extra stuff. Playing to collect, lots of collectibles. I guess you could say there is replayability if you're going for all of that, but would the replayability be worth it? Maybe. I can't say if it's a guaranteed yes or no. It depends on the player. The retro stages and the challenge stages. I would say this is worth it for the retro stages alone. That's probably the best part this game has to offer is the retro stages. But they are short, so adhere to what money you want to spend for this game. Maybe wait for when it's on sale if you're going for the retro stages. And the challenge stages, I really don't think they're worth playing unless you're just playing the stages themselves and not going for the gold and the gems, but come on, who's going to do that? You gotta go for the collectibles. And give it a review in shorts, I'm at to say 6.5 out of 10. It just doesn't feel as memorable as Runner and Runner 2. And the gameplay being as difficult as it was, I can't say is any much more redeeming to the game itself. Even if they say they're going to add some difficulty patches later on for the game. And for the gameplay style itself, I feel like Runner 2 does it so much better. Now, did I enjoy the game? I did enjoy the game. There were some parts of the game that I did enjoy. But I have more fond memories of Runner 2 than I did Runner 3. And that's a bit of a shame. It really is a shame. I wanted so much to like this game. And I wanted it to be really good. But at the end of the day, I could only recommend the first Runner or Runner 2. If you really want to play Runner 3, wait for it to go on sale. That's all I can really say to you guys. Am I disappointed? I am disappointed, but it is what it is. I give props to Choice Provisions trying to bring back the Runnerverse, and they did everything they could, but at the end of the day, I don't think I can recommend Runner 3. And that's going to do it for my time here on the channel with Runner 3. So, thank you guys so much for watching. At this point, we're going to stick to video uploads every Friday for a while, but we may be starting another series playthrough soon on the channel due to the success that this has had. So if you guys want to see another series playthrough, let me know in the comments below what you guys want to see. I already have one request to do the entire Doom series, and I have been looking into that. So Kevin, if you're watching this, don't worry. I heard your request, and I am still thinking about it. So if you guys want to see more, let me know with the like or the comments below. And if any of you enjoyed this playthrough at all, please subscribe. I don't usually say to subscribe to my channel, but I would definitely appreciate it if you did. Anyways, that's it for me here. Thank you so much for watching this series playthrough, and as always, I'll see you in the next video. Alright, later guys.